The Story of Nangeli. The sun was setting in the sky of Travancore. Redness had spread, but darkness had spread on the earth. A darkness which had crushed the self-respect of Dalit women for centuries. A small house situated at the edge of the village, from where the echo of the sea waves could be heard clearly. It was heard that Nangeli lived in the same house, a young beautiful woman but bound in the shackles of her caste. She had dreams in her eyes, but the society had snatched away the right to see them. Before moving ahead in the story, Jai must increase our self-confidence by writing the Constitution. Enja Va Caste in Travancore state. Women of that time were not only considered inferior, but their bodies were also claimed as their property. There was a strange rule for them that they could not cover their breasts, and if anyone wanted to do so, they had to pay a heavy price to the king. This was a law that trampled upon the dignity of women. People of the upper castes saw this rule as a show of power. It was a matter of pride for them that women of the lower castes could not cover their bodies. Village women always kept their eyes downcast. There would be fear, and unspoken insult would be written on their bodies, but Nangeli was different. A flame was burning inside her, a rebellion that was getting stronger with each passing day. Nangeli still remembered the night when her mother returned home crying her body was red, and he was lying blue. Father had angrily asked what happened. Mother had replied in a trembling voice. Tax collectors had come. I refused to pay the tax. Mother could not tell what happened after that, but the younger Nangeli had seen it on Mother's body. There were marks of whips on her little heart. That night a seed was sown, a seed which was going to become a tree of revolution with time. Nangeli had grown up now and was married to a simple farmer Chirukandi, who loved the sky as much as he loved the earth. One day she was sitting outside her house when there was a commotion in the village. Tax collectors were coming. People hid in their houses. Some women covered their bodies with leaves somehow, but they knew that this was temporary. If they give in, they will be punished. Nangeli stood quietly watching everything. Her fist said to Kandan, I will not tolerate this insult anymore. Chirak looked at her worriedly. But Nangeli, these are the king's men. Opposing them means inviting death. Nangeli said firmly that if we bow down today, our future generations will also bow down. Someone will have to start. Chirak became silent. He knew that Nangeli does not rest until she completes what she has decided. Chirak became silent. He knew that Nangeli does not rest until she completes what she has decided. The morning sun had risen, but with her, there was also the sound of a new storm. The villagers were terrified because they knew that what Nangeli had decided was not an ordinary thing. And then the sound of horses' hooves was heard from a distance. The king's tax collectors had arrived. What will happen now? Will Nangeli remain firm on her decision? Will she challenge this tradition? The sound of horses' hooves was echoing in the village. People had closed the doors of their houses, but the eyes peeping from the windows were scared. The tax-collecting soldiers were stationed in the village. On their faces there was the same pride that had been the power of authority for centuries. It was visible on the faces of those who kept it. Standing at the crossroads of the village, the chief officer announced in a loud voice that the time to give breasts has come. The women who have dared to cover their bodies should come forward to pay the tax. His voice was harsh in the village. A strange silence had prevailed. No one moved forward, but then Nangeli came forward, breaking through the crowd. She was walking slowly. There was no fear in her walk, but a firm confidence. As soon as she reached in front of the soldiers, the people standing there got scared. As soon as she reached in front of the soldiers, the people standing there got scared. The officer stared at her and said, "Nangeli, you know what the rules say? How dare you cover your breasts?" Nangeli's eyes were sharp. She said, "Because they are mine, no tax can be imposed on them." There was a commotion in the village. No one had ever seen such a thing. "You did not show courage." The chief officer laughed out loud. "Do you think that you alone can change this system?" Nangeli replied without moving, "Someone or the other starts, and I have taken this responsibility on my shoulders." The chief officer's face turned red with anger. He shouted at the soldiers. He signaled the villagers to catch her, but as the soldiers moved forward, Nangeli took out a sharp knife from her waist and drew a line on the ground in front of her. "Crossing this line would mean waging a war against injustice," she declared. The villagers were left breathless. No one could have imagined that a single woman would challenge the law of an entire state in this manner. No one could have imagined that a single woman would challenge the law of an entire state in this manner. The chief officer was furious. He ordered the soldiers to advance, but before they could catch her, Nangeli took a step that made history. The villagers were shocked. The eyes of the villagers were wide with fear and surprise. Time seemed to have stopped. There was a strange restlessness in the air, as if a storm was about to come. Nangeli, without hesitation, raised the knife in her hands. The chief officer and the soldiers moved towards her, but before they could stop her, she closed her eyes, took a deep breath and cut her breasts with her own hands. Screams echoed all around. A stream of blood spread on the ground as if the earth itself was crying against this injustice. Nangeli's face turned white with pain. But there was no fear in her eyes, just an unwavering resolve. She stumbled but regained her composure, placed her cut breasts on a leaf, and threw them in front of the chief officer. "Now go and give this locker to your king." Her voice was like a roar. It was as if some goddess herself had descended on earth. The entire village was stunned. It was as if some goddess herself had descended on earth. The entire village was stunned. The chief officer and the soldiers also stood dumbfounded. They could not understand what had happened. In a few moments, Nangeli's body began to tremble. Her breathing became heavy. Blood started flowing from her mouth. The sharp edge of the water had formed a deep red mud around his feet. Some women of the village ran and tried to catch him, but it was too late. Nangeli's husband was returning from Chirukandi when he saw a commotion in the village. He ran there quickly. When he saw Nangeli's severed breasts and the blood-stained ground, he fell on his knees. Tears flowed from his eyes. He took Nangeli in his arms, but his heartbeats were getting weak. Nangeli said this in a weak voice because there should have been someone who would have come forward to end this injustice, and saying this, she breathed her last. Chirak's eyes had dried up. Chirak's eyes had dried up. The people of the village followed him. No one said anything. After reaching the riverbank in Chirukandi, without telling anyone, he threw himself into the burning pyre. The flames of fire started rising to the sky. She defied the laws and gave up her life. The news of Nangeli's sacrifice gradually spread throughout Travancore. This news reached the king as well. The fire of rebellion broke out in every village. Women of lower castes started protesting against their religion. They took off their clothes and threw them away, and announced that now we will cover our bodies in the way we want. This fire spread so much that finally the king had to bow down and the slaughter was ended forever. The village of Nangeli still exists today and was named Mula Chip Rambu, which means the land of breasts. Its story is alive even after centuries because some battles are won not by swords but by sacrifice.